What's going on, everyone? So yesterday, dejounte Murray was traded to the New Orleans Pelicans, and that was quite the surprise. It kind of came out of left field, and they got dejounte for, in my opinion, a very cheap deal, right? Dyson Daniels, don't get me wrong, is a nice young prospect, but Larry Nance, kind of just like a salary dump, and then you got 2 firsts, right? You got the Lakers 2025 first, okay, but outside of that, it's like the Pelicans are probably going to be good. So I thought the return was very questionable. It literally was like half of what, they traded to the Spurs for him for. So, but dejounte Murray was also a guy that was kind of linked to the Spurs, that there were murmurs that maybe the Spurs could have a reunion with dejounte Murray and they could work something out to make that happen. But now ultimately we know that dejounte Murray is headed to the New Orleans Pelicans. And now that begs the question of, is Trae Young headed to the Spurs? So the San Antonio Spurs are the owners of basically all of Atlanta's picks, right? And the Atlanta Hawks are clearly heading for a tank. The Atlanta Hawks are clearly looking to tank and kind of hit this reset button, right? They traded dejounte Murray. They're unloading all these guys. Word is that Trae Young does not want to go through a rebuild. That basically, even though he's like 25 years old and still young, he's looking at it as like, no, I want to win now. I don't want to spend 2-3 years. And now I'm 28, 29, and we're now just getting into contention, right? And Atlanta is clearly hitting the reset button. They're stacking assets, picks, like they're trying to unload everyone that they can to get as many pieces as they can. And so it kind of begs the question of like, okay, is Trae kind of destined now to go to the Spurs, to where the Spurs are just kind of basically giving back, what essentially in the long run, you kind of look at it as they're basically just swap dejounte Murray for Trae Young in the long run, right? Basically you could just send back Atlanta's picks, go here, now you get your picks back. Maybe you're sending them, because you'd have to, Spurs have a ton of cap space, so they really don't. They could absorb a bunch of stuff. Like maybe you just send like a Johnson and that's it, right? And then just like absorb the rest. There's options there because Atlanta's also trying to clear as much cap space as possible. Also, quick little side note, the way that everything is kind of unfolded kind of makes me think that I wonder if the Spurs were lining up for something like this. Because they drafted Rob Dillingham. The Spurs were linked to Rob Dillingham for like months as like he would be perfect. The Spurs need a point guard. Even the second round guy that they got and Juan Nunez, he's staying in Barcelona. Like he's playing in Barcelona next year. Right, Real Madrid. He's like technically under contract with Real Madrid and Barcelona, but Real Madrid is not supposed to match his contract, so he's supposed to end up playing next year in Barcelona. So even like the prodigy, as he's named, even he's not coming back. So it's like Rob Dillingham would have been perfect for that young point guard. So it's like the Spurs getting the picks that. Okay, like you got picks, you got a pick swap in 2030, and then you got, another pick in 2031 from a team that may or may not be good then, and you are trying to, like, at that point, you're probably, hopefully, a dynasty at that point, right? It just doesn't really make sense unless you're trying to stack assets for a trade, right? If you're trying to turn Rob Dillingham into picks, that then you could go and make another trade. But the reason I kind of wanted to make this a little sidebar is I actually think that makes more sense if they were going after like a Darius Garland, because a team like the Cleveland Cavaliers, they wouldn't need a Rob Dillingham, right? There would be no reason for them to take on Rob Dillingham, because it's kind of been the conflict is that you have essentially 2 point guards. So, but picks make sense. So that's the reason I wanted to make it a sidebar, because I don't think that makes sense for a potential Trae Young trade, just because, Rob Dillingham would have made sense for Atlanta. If Atlanta's rebuilding and hitting the reset button, them trading Trae to the Spurs, they might have wanted Rob Dillingham. But also, would Trae want to go to the Spurs too? That's another question, right? There's also the thing of that the Spurs aren't very interested in Trae. But look, Victor Wembanyama, he wants to win now, right? Like, he wants to get as much talent as possible. Trae and Victor make a ton of sense in a pairing, because if anyone can mask Trae's biggest ailment, which is the defensive side of things, it is Victor Wembanyama and the insane amount of ground that he covers. Also, the biggest problem the Spurs have had is a guy getting Victor the basketball. It was incredibly frustrating watching last year, and just watching Victor Wembanyama at times literally be wide open. The guy's like 10 feet tall, and how do you miss him? And like, they would just completely like, it was like he wasn't even on the court. They'd completely phase out their best player. So getting a guy in Trae, I do think would elevate Victor. Problem is that Spurs like that free-flowing offense where Trae is just very high usage, very ball dominant, very on ball. Is that a system that Pop would be willing to kind of change and compromise? But also, you can, in the same breath, argue, could Pop kind of get Trae to evolve and adapt, right? Like, would Trae be willing to kind of make those changes and make those compromises? Because, like, the one thing, so, like, you had the reports that the Spurs were linked to Trae and may have been interested in Trae. And then you had, like, Spurs reporters come out and go, absolutely not. Trae isn't a Spurs type of player, like system player, so they have no interest in him. But Victor has talked heavily about, like, he wants to win now and, like, he doesn't want to waste. And if you're the Spurs, it is probably in your best interest to do that, right? Because Victor is cheap right now. And he's already the best defensive player in the league, right? Like, he's probably already, you could argue, a top 15 player in the league, right? So, like, if you can get talent around him now, that would be the best. Because, again, he's eventually going to get paid. And he's going to get paid big. And by that point, now you have the new CBA and you have all this stuff. Like, if you can build and put together a contending roster now, that just puts you in such a great position going forward. And now if you have this team that's winning championships, like, at that point, who cares? Be a second apron team, right? Who cares? If you're winning championships every other year and you're this dynasty, like, then yeah, like, who cares? But I just think that there is this kind of balance of, like, okay, we gotta make some moves now. We gotta kind of throw our hat in the ring now and really try to get this worked out, right? But also, again, does Trae want to go there? Because even if Trae went there, yes, him and Victor Wembanyama, I think, would be a great duo, but Spurs would still need some other pieces. So he'd still have to wait probably a year or two before he's really a contender, right? So that's the question, is, like, would he be willing to do so, right? Is he willing to go to a team like the Spurs and go, okay, like, I'll ride it out for a year or two, but now you got me and Victor, like, let's go. Right? Like, I need you to I spend the rest of this year and next year really rounding out this roster so we can go and compete with the best and go win a championship, right? Like, I just think all parties involved would have to be kind of willing. But I just think it's interesting. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you think that the Spurs should go after Trae Young? Do you think, like, no, stay away from Trae? Do you want to keep Atlanta's picks? Because, there is an argument if you're the Spurs, right? Like, you're almost better off just keeping the picks, right? And just, like, like, hoping that they're lottery picks, right? Like, so, I don't know, it's something to keep in mind. Also, I think that there's an argument that, like, Darius Garland, I think, would be the better option and fit. Because also you may be able to keep some of Atlanta's picks, right? You're going to have to trade some stuff to go get Darius Garland, but you may end up being able to kind of have best of both worlds, especially after the Rob Dillingham trade, Or you'd have Minnesota's picks that you could add in. So you could send a couple picks to, to go land a Darius Garland and keep, an Atlanta pick or two, which I think could be another interesting play for them. But anyway, again, however you feel, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below. What do you think the Spurs should do? Think Trae's the answer? Let me know. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.